When it comes to reviewing the first act of the second season, I really like seeing what the community thinks, which is why I made a poll or a community poll here on YouTube on this channel in the community tab, where you can go on and vote for how high the score should be for the first act of the second season, and you can even leave a comment to add something else besides the vote. Of course, this is not going to be in vain. I will make a separate video next week on Friday where I will showcase the result of the vote. I believe a week is good enough, and it's going to be before the second act drops. And when it comes to me saying something or making a review, I will get into spoilers, but before I go into spoilers, I need to mention something for people who do not want to see spoilers. Although, if you haven't seen any spoilers up until now, it's very surprising because the internet is already full of content related to Arcane. But I will keep it short and I will simply say that it's worth a watch and you should go on and watch it. Right now I'm going to get into spoilers. The first episode of the first act of the second season begins the only way it could, with the aftermath of the explosion. Truth be told, I expected more of the counselors to die. That is, before I saw that German translation of one of the trailers where it confirmed that only half of the council was dead, and I believe that Mel generated some sort of shield. And I'm saying that because somehow they went out of that explosion without taking any major damage. And it's something Jace talks about later in the episode, telling Mel that he somehow went out of that explosion without any scratches compared to Victor, who's on the brink of death. The shield being generated is just part of a theory, nothing is confirmed, but I'm sure it will be confirmed later in the season. In this episode we can also see the funeral of Cassandra Kiraman, and I really liked the music playing during the funeral, together with the art style decision, which reminds me a lot of Samurai Jack, because in that show they sometimes had this idea of making the background in one color while the main character has their own color, right? Which is something being applied in similar fashion right here. The most important part of the episode is the memorial, because after that battle, after Rennie decides to attack with the Chemtech monsters and fails, every one of the characters changes their mind. I'm talking about Caitlyn, Vi, Jace and the Council, and I'm using these two separately because at one point Jace wants to leave the council for Victor, who's inside some sort of chrysalis after fusing with the hex core, which is tied to the explosion because Victor was in a very bad state. It's the first time when Jace sees Victor's hand and his leg, and he doesn't care at all. He simply wants to save Victor and he immediately goes to the hex core room to do that. It is a scene I really liked, and I understand in a way why people are disappointed with the fact that Victor decides to leave as soon as he wakes up, but I have no problems with that. I have seen people mentioning that Victor saw the blueprints with the weapon and decided to leave after that, but I believe it's much more complex than that. And that's because we know from Jace that the hex core evolves much faster than he can keep up with. Who knows what's inside Victor's head, besides suspiciously Sky's voice. Not only that, but he's being given instructions on where to go, and that's how he finds himself in the Shimmer Attic district, and that's when he cures them at the end of the second episode. Let's go back to the memorial, which is, as I said, the turning point of each of these characters. We have the council, or the leftover of the council, allowing enforcers to go in zone for a show of force to basically capture Jinx, but without Hextech weapons. After the memorial, they allow a task force to go in zone with Hextech weaponry. All of that Hextech weaponry is made or repaired by Jace, even though at first he promised that because of Victor he was not going to create weapons with Hextech, but after the memorial and after almost dying, he switches up his mind. Another person who switches up her mind is Vi, who's offered to join the enforcers by Caitlyn and immediately refuses, and I was like, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. That was a must. I mean, if she accepted the first time, it would have made absolutely no sense. Which is why I was kind of okay with the second time, but even then, why would you accept it? Lastly, we have Caitlyn, who's deeply troubled by Jinx. She keeps seeing her, and she's also on her path to the dark side, becoming a Sith apprentice. And I'm saying apprentice, even though at the end she will be the commander. Yeah, she is just the puppet, because in the back, it's Ambessa pulling all the strings. The turning point of everyone was pretty much concocted by her. She wanted access to the council and she got it through Salo, but they refused to use any hextech weaponry. So that's why she wanted to create this attack, so then everyone would picture the Noxians as a capable force to take on every foe. I like that so much because thanks to these connections between episodes, each one of them rises to a higher level. I think I will rate the first episode a 10 out of 10. Why not? It is a very good episode. I have no problems with it, or at least even if I'm trying to look for something which I dislike, I can't find anything. And the only way I can find anything to dislike in the first episode is if I check online to see what other people say. It is a setup episode for the future and also a continuation for what happened in the past. So for me, it is a 10 out of 10 episode. Moving away from that to the second episode, which is probably one of my favorite episodes in the entire series. And I'm saying that because Jinx is my favorite character in Arcane, and she was and is my favorite champion in League of Legends for a long time now. And because of that, and because the episode is centered around her, it is for sure a top episode, which is why I will simply say it's a 10 out of 10, but I will still go through the scenes which I liked the most about the episode. Starting off with the Jinx monologue, which is simple but from the heart, which makes it good, complemented by the nice parallel to the first season whenever Silco lowers Jinx in the water, and now it is Jinx lowering Silco's body in the water. Then of course we get to see the aftermath of what happened in the Undercity after Silco died. We know there is a power vacuum which formed up, and now the Canberrans are fighting each other for the top spot. 3 of them are left after Rennie died in the last episode, and we see Jinx walking across the Undercity with a very good music playing in the background. Top music for sure. That was a nice scene, and this one is complemented as well by the fact that Jinx finally finds someone to care for. And it's something I predicted a long time ago, the need for a redeemable quality for Jinx. And that redeemable quality is being good to kids, being nice to them, maybe even teaching them things. And in this case, it's Isha, the little girl who she saves from the Canberran goons, right? And we will see them later in the season as well, based on what we've seen in promotional content released before the second season. Then we get some more scenes with Sevika, who initially wants to unite the Canberrans, but they are reluctant from doing that. They want to give Jinx away, or at least Mitch wants to give Jinx away to the Piltovans. However, Sevika says that they are not giving anyone from their own. I really like this from Sevika. Last time, whenever things looked grim, she simply betrayed Vander and allied herself with Silco, but now whenever she's given an easy out, she doesn't take it simply because that way she would betray someone from their own people, and that someone is Jinx, who she hated in the past. It seems like she had a change of mind, or a change of heart, however you wanna call it. She even wants to defend Jinx whenever Smitch is cornering her with his goons. Maybe the conversation they had at the last drop previous to this scene is the catalyst to Sevika changing her mind when it comes to Jinx. And it's not only Sevika who changes her mind, it's also Jinx, because she decides to make a new arm for Sevika, which is going to be the central part of the next fight scene. A fight scene which is very enjoyable from start to finish. I mean, you have Jinx giving pointers to Sevika, and Sevika listens to the pointers, pulls the lever, and then you have random abilities on the arm while the Get Jinxed music video is playing out of the 2 speakers coming out of the arm, right? That was a very fun moment, and Sevika ended up absolutely packing Smitch. That's everything I enjoyed about the episode. It's pretty much almost every scene, but those which I haven't talked about will be remembered in the next part of the video. So as I said, a 10 out of 10 episode. Remember how I said that everyone had a turning point and Caitlyn was spiraling to the dark side? Well, in the first episode, she received the USB of the house, the key of the house of Kiramans, and it looks more like a steampunk USB where she finds out information about the people of Zone, and of course, she finds out about the Kiramans and how they trapped the Grey underground. That's the smoke or the toxic fumes from the factories, right? And you can see her weaponizing it against the people of Zone in the second episode whenever they enter one of the Canberran's lairs, and then whenever they are going to the location where the boxing machine is located at and they almost capture Jinx. Well, that entire process of weaponizing the Grey to hurt the Canberrans, clean the streets of bad people and good people as well, just to find Jinx is put out in the beginning of the third episode. And all of that is in 2D animation with a pretty good music in the background. Before we get to the final fight scene, there are two major reveals in this episode. These two reveals are absolutely insane, and the second one is probably even crazier than the first one, or at least to me, and I am saying that because I somewhat expected the first one to happen, mostly because I have seen plenty of theories, and one of them was very interesting, and it proved to be a one-of-one of what actually happened. Basically, the reveal of the Black Rose, which is a very powerful organization from Noxus. Then we go to the second one. So Echo's tree is corrupted by the Hextech in a way, the leaves are falling off with this Hextech corruption on them, and then, because Heimerdinger has seen the corruption before, decides to help Echo. I have to say this was a very good scene, because I always thought that Echo needed some kind of motivation to create the Z-Drive. Maybe this will be the motivation needed to create the Z-Drive. I expected the tree to die or to burn. Maybe it will happen by the end of the season. But right now, Echo, Heimerdinger meet Jace at one point, and they together go deep underground in the Hextech Tower. Truth be told, I did not expect the Hextech Tower to go that deep underground, and after Jace said that this is very far from the main fissures, is that foreshadowing? Is it going to explode at one point and it will affect everyone? I mean, who knows? The thing is, this is where the second reveal happens. Instead of whatever they have down there, as soon as Heimerdinger touches some kind of corruption from the Hextech, a wild rune spawns, or at least Echo calls it a wild rune, because for example, in Teamfight Tactics, there is an upcoming event related to Arcane, and there is something similar to that, and it's called an anomaly. At this point we can't really tell what it is, we can make guesses or theorize on it for sure, but I am eager to find out more about it. It was a great scene, and I liked the decision of playing it during the fight scene between Jinx and Sevika Caitlyn. And when it comes to the fight scene, all I can say, a masterpiece in my eyes. Many people would probably disagree with that. It's hard to claim that something is a masterpiece, but I liked every single moment of it. I'm not sure what was the end goal of the fight, because you can hear that she's telling Sevika it wasn't supposed to end like that, as in she wanted it a bit different. I'm not sure what it should have been, but I can't wait to theorize more on that. But what we do not need to theorize on is that after the fight is over, and all of this grey goes in Piltover and it explodes with all of those colors, is part of why Jinx will become a symbol in the Undercity. When it comes to this fight scene, I could go on for about 15 minutes and hyper-analyze the scene, and maybe I will find something I disliked, but I don't want that. I still think it's a masterpiece in my eyes. I thought it was great from start to finish. It was complemented by what was happening with Heimerdinger, Echo and Jace, which is why I count all of that as a masterpiece together. I don't get it twisted. There is one other person I want to mention. I'm talking about Caitlyn finally fulfilling her role in the dark side, becoming an apprentice to the Sith Lord Ambessa. That was very good. She just left Vi over there the same way Vi left Powder. But Caitlyn was actually in the dark side. Let me compare the scenes to you. So we have younger Vi, 16, 17-year-old Vi, slapping Powder, okay? And then she looks at her hand, she sees the blood, and she goes away, probably to think about it. And whenever she sees that Silco is approaching Powder, she immediately wants to go back to her. With Caitlyn simply hits Vi with the weapon, she looks at her for a split second and goes on her way. I still think this fall to the dark side is believable. I mean, if it was for Anakin, the chosen one, the previous chosen one, then for sure it is for Caitlyn, right? So she will go back to the light side at the end of the season, we all know that. Based on the story from Star Wars, we need to also follow that one-to-one. The final scenes which I haven't mentioned are all about Singed, who is the actual biggest menace of the Undercity. Everything you see him doing are part of the experiment of creating Warwick. Besides all of that, the third episode is also 10 out of 10, however, throughout the episode it wasn't a 10 out of 10. I'm not gonna go into detail because it doesn't really matter. The final fight brought it back up to a 10 out of 10. That results in the entire act being a 10 out of 10, and hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. We'll see what happens next, and well, I'll see you then.